me switch the music. Alright, let me put that like that. And then let's go to...
See if you can understand me.
Let me make sure.
You play, we sing.
Dope. Alright.
Music, maybe
Podcast. And then, oops, Ableton. Let's make sure this is at a good level. Yo, testing.
Adrian just went into it a little bit, but I want to hear how you define clean air. I think we can assume what clean air is, but how do you define clean air?
This other agency, and
All right, let's hop in this. Here we go. This is gonna be a lot of fun, guys.
Adrian just went into it a little bit, but I want to hear how you define clean air. I think we can assume what clean air is, but how do you define clean air? Why is air fine?
Wait. Oh, my thing is on.
I don't speak Brazilian, but
All right.
Adrian just went into it a little bit, but I want to hear how you define clean air. I think we can assume what clean air is, but how? What clean air is, but how? What clean air is, but how? What clean air is, but how do you define clean air? Why is air quality important? And as Adrian alluded to, what is the air situation here in Southern California?
Sure, thanks, Jessica. Well, Adrian's the attorney, I'm not, but there is a legal definition of clean air defined by both the California and the federal Clean Air Acts, and that has to do with national ambient air quality standards and California air quality standards. But the plain language definition is just, clean air is air that doesn't make you sick when you breathe it. And that's what we're trying to get here. And the problem is, that the South Coast Air Basin, which includes Los Angeles, Riverside, San Bernardino, Orange County areas, has the worst smog of any air basin in the whole country. And we also have problems with something that's called toxic air contaminants. And these are the things that cause cancer and immediate health problems and affect individuals in a lot of different ways. And the most prominent toxic air contaminant that we're dealing with is diesel exhaust. And diesel exhaust has 40 different toxic chemicals that we know of in it. But even when you combined all that and they looked at it, they found that diesel exhaust itself had worse impacts than they would if you added up the individual components. So it had its own category of toxic air contaminants. People in Southern California are exposed to a lot of diesel exhaust, and especially from port operations, from operations at our warehouses and our rail yards and along our freight transportation corridors. And it has a real impact on public health. So back in 2016, California did a clean freight sustainability plan. And in that, the California Air Resources Board estimated that 2,000 people, roughly 2,200 people, die prematurely every year, just being exposed to the exhaust from the equipment, the ships, the locomotives, the trucks, from our warehouse and port and logistics industry.
2,200. Wow. And currently,
cost of $20 billion a year, about 2,200 estimate. There was a range in there.
Oh, wow. And currently our economy is shifting more towards online shopping. So that means more diesel fuel, that means more transportation, and the negative impacts to our air quality are also shifting to the worst. How is the goods movement industry and the warehousing of these products having a significant impact on air pollution. I know we talked about that a little bit, but like just expand on that.
The movement of stuff is far and away the largest source of air pollution in Southern California. And that air pollution has a disproportionate impact on those low-income communities and communities of color that are co-located, next to the ports, along the transportation corridors, near the locomotive rail yards, near the warehouse. Near the locomotive rail yards, near the locomotive near the locomotive rail yards, near the warehouses. And those people who really suffer the disproportionate impact suffer a wide variety of illnesses linked to the exposure of air pollution. There's, the things you might expect, like asthma and respiratory disease, but there's also things like heart disease. But there's also things like heart disease. They find that heart disease. They find that when there's elevated levels of particulate matter, or particulate matter 2.5 PM, particulate matter 2.5 PM 2.5, then they can track that, and hospitalization from cardiovascular, from heart attacks following that. And it's been shown in plenty of studies. We also have cancer and premature death. It's linked directly to exposure to air pollution. So yeah, the movement of freight has real impacts and real costs that are being borne by those who live next to the freight industry.
Adrian, do you want to add anything to how, Adrian, do you want to add? Adrian, do you want to add anything to how the impacts play out in the neighborhoods that are along that goods movement supply chain, from the ports to the freeway, the train, the warehouses, the airports? I mean, it's vast. It's long. I don't think people have a great grasp of how big this impact is. And those neighborhoods that happen to most of the time be low income and populated by people of color are being impacted indirectly by the effects of online shopping.
Yeah, the pandemic was a very interesting experience for me as an environmental and health communities lawyer, because basically, while the economy was suffering in many respects, a lot of people were out of work and whatnot. A lot of my clients and coalition partners who are working with folks who are either on the front line near rail yards, warehouses, the ports, after the initial kind of shutdown, they were calling and talking to me and say, hey, there's just so much truck traffic, there's so much more ship traffic, there's so much more stuff coming in through our ports. And all the meanwhile, we were still pushing, the warehouses, the airport, the warehouses, the airports, the ports to clean up their pollution. And the pandemic was used as an excuse for the freight and logistics industry. Oh, we can't do more. We can't do more to clean up because of this pandemic. And I think the sad reality, looking back on that experience, is while folks were dealing with the COVID-19 pandemic, which disproportionately harmed lower income communities and communities of color, they were also being doused with a much larger level of pollution from warehousing, rail yards, and ports. And now that we've looked back, there's analysis coming out from the state and other places that as ships were queued up off the ports of Los Angeles and Long Beach, that was having off the ports of Los Angeles and Long Beach, that was having real impacts on the communities of Los Angeles, the community of Wilmington, San Pedro, Long Beach, the communities right next to the ports. And in fact, more people died and got sick. And in fact, the ports. And in fact, more people died and got sick from that pollution. And so I think if you look at our goods movement system, it's kind of, and you overlay it with a lot of the disadvantaged communities as defined. A lot of the with a lot of the disadvantaged communities as defined by California, there's a strong correlation. The folks are citing warehouses, rail yards, and ports in communities that are already overburdened with, refineries, manufacturing, and other harms. And so it's a big issue that's layered upon many other issues. And I think the big thing for me is it just got worse during the pandemic. We had, a lot of people don't understand that last year we had the worst air quality we've seen in 3 decades. And so a lot of that was probably due to increases in the freight industry.
I think a lot of people assume, because of some of the information that was coming out, that they assume that we had the better air quality because our passenger vehicles weren't on the road. I've heard that argument.
Yeah, and I think I think it was kind of a misapprehension of the pandemic. Initially, there was cleaner air because there was just a lot less activity. It was also correlated with the early spring, so there was some weather correlation to that. But as we got into summer, when the heat kicked in, a lot of volumes of freight and other things, we saw really high levels of pollution. And I think the one thing I would say is I think when people saw a crystal clear sky in Los Angeles and the Inland Empire and other places, I think they started to realize, wow, this could be like this all the time if we actually rolled up our sleeves and solved our air pollution
Thanks
crisis.
for pulling up, my G.
But I think what Dr. Liu,
I know this shit's kind of boring, but thug life.
but I think what Dr. Liu alluded to is
You never text me back, big dog. What's going on with that? Huh?
the freight and logistics industry is one of the primary and actually the biggest driver of our air pollution crisis.
I'm gonna do a time break. So we've got 5 minutes and so 6 minutes. And so I'll take this one question. And I think this is a good segue for us to speak up. And I think this is a good segue for us to speak up about some projects that are actually coming up. There are 2 large goods movement projects proposed in Southern California. One is this
Busy on the weekends. Here, let's go somewhere else real quick. Let's just catch a different vibe for a sec. Busy on the weekends? Busy during the week? You forgot to text your boy back? What's really going on, man? What's really going on, dude?
One is this mega warehouse in Moreno Valley, which is, for our listeners that may not know, that's 65 miles east of Los Angeles, next to Riverside. And the other is an air cargo expansion project at the San Bernardino Airport, which we'll get into that later. So let's start with the mega warehouse in Moreno Valley. Can you explain that project purpose and how much land is it supposed to take up?
Yeah, so it was a project called the World Logistics Center, and it's in Moreno Valley, which is
It's all good, duder. I know we got life and shit. Life and kids and cats.
It's in Moreno Valley, which is east of Los Angeles, east. It's in Moreno Valley, which is east of Los Angeles and about 80 miles from the ports of LA.
His name is Pharaoh.
East of Los Angeles and about 80 miles from the ports of LA and Long Beach. And it was a large facility. It was going to be 40.6 million square feet of warehousing. If you think about the indoor space, that's basically 700 football.
How are you doing, bro?
700 football fields of, and it's not just one building, but it'd be, dozens of buildings, but it was a large development, and each day approximately 14,000 would come into and out of that facility. So it was adding truck trips on.
Pharaoh, Pharaoh.
So it was adding truck trips on the 60 freeway, which is one of our busiest and most clogged by diesel trucks. And so it was a real big concern for my clients, including Dr. Liu and other folks who challenged that where
this shit is boring. I'm not gonna lie.
Warehouse, and I think it's it's one of the largest warehouse developments in the world.
Wait, a streaming PC? Have I seen it? Nah, dude. Shoot the link, bruh. What are we talking about? I want to see.
I think one of the kind of things about our region is there's this project, there's the airport project, but there's dozens of other large projects that are.
I agree. I mean,
right
you have to talk about the Southern California International Gateway.
I think I'm going to start streaming Breath of the Wild again from Steam Valve. Let's see. I think I'm gonna. Oh, damn, Daniel. Wait, you can stream from this thing? Handheld? It looks pretty nutty, dude.
Rail yard project.
But yeah, I think I'm gonna stream Breath of the Wild. Probably start tonight.
Rail yard project at the Port of Los Angeles. It's another huge piece of everything that's going in, and the port's pushing for it yet again, even though we won a lawsuit against that facility.
Yeah, it's an overwhelming amount of expansion of this freight.
I mean, if you're playing online, you're gonna get capped by people on mouse and keyboard, but that's just, that's. I guess if you're happy to do that, then that's tight.
Expansion of this freight and logistics industry. And I think one of the sad realities is I think the status quo notion from a lot of the folks pushing the expansion of the freight industry is that the public should bear the health consequences of this expansion.
You should stream, dude. Why
and
not?
That's why you have folks.
You should stream, dude. I'll definitely pull up on your stream. Oh, you streamed some code the other day or a couple months ago. What's up with that, dude?
Folks like the lawyers that are justice who work with clients to push back on these projects, especially when they don't.
Can you plug it into a monitor though? That's the question.
Comply with our state or federal environmental laws.
Emulators too? Sick.
Joe, you were talking about the port, and I can understand, whether right or wrong, but why they want a development at the port, because that's where the goods are coming in. Why Moreno Valley? Can you explain the end game for the goods movement industry, and why does movement want to go to places like Moreno Valley?
Dope, dude.
Yeah, well, it's the easiest way to explain what's going on with everything in logistics industry is money.
Here, you want to hear a cool track I made with my homegirl? Peep game, dude. No, where is it? Where is it? This track is pretty hard, dude. I'm not gonna lie. Here we go. You gotta turn this shit up. We'll go to the studio real quick. Why not?
Take your time to align with me. Ease your mind, let me be your peace. Lay back, baby, I can set you free. Let me set you free. Let me set you free. And take your time on me. Let me be your peace. Lay back, baby, I can set you free.
That siren, yep. The rest is just an instrumental, because we were just writing a hook, but it turned out to like a little verse thing. But this is definitely a bop right here. The siren's about to come out. That's the money shot right there. When the siren comes. Yeah, that shit is nice. No, that's not me on the talk box. It's my buddy Martamius. Shouts out Martamius. Yes, sir.
Comply with our state or federal environmental laws.
Joe, you were talking about the port, and I can understand, whether right or
Super
wrong,
chill,
but
super sexy,
why they want
vibey.
a development at the port, because that's where the goods are coming in. Why Moreno Valley? Can you explain the end game for the goods movement industry, and why does movement want to go to places like Moreno Valley?
Yeah, well, it's the easiest way to explain what's going on with everything in logistics industry is money. And all you have to do is take a look at where the money's going and who has the money and who's making the money to figure out what's happening, right? So there's more than $1 billion to figure out what's happening, right? So there's more than $1 billion a day worth of stuff that goes in and out of our ports. And if there's cheap warehouse land in the Inland Empire, people are going to use that warehouse land to build warehouses. It's expensive to build warehouses. In fact, probably impossible to build warehouses right next to the ports. There are some, but not many, not like the mega warehouses that we see going in the Inland Empire. It's possible to build warehouses right next to the ports. There are some, but not many, not like the mega warehouses that we see going in the Inland Empire. And so these people, they have clients like Amazon and Target and other retailers, and they make money servicing those clients, getting their stuff in and out of their warehouses. And so you've got a lot of proposals. You have 1 million square foot and bigger warehouses coming in like every month, at least 1 or 2, it seems like. So it's, and at this particular moment, because of And at this particular moment, because of all the backlog in the industry, there is warehouses are completely full, and their industry, there is backlog in the industry. Warehouses are completely full, and they're demanding top dollar. So there's a lot of money to be made. I think that, when I
Peace
look
out,
at
dude.
it,
Enjoy your
that's
meal.
what I take a look at. Who's making the money, and how does that explain what's going on?
Right on the money, actually. Pause it for a second. Right? And this is Moreno Valley settlement, just because we like people to hear that there's wins and solutions. Hey, listeners, quick break here. Okay. The Moreno Valley
Making the money, and how does that explain what's going on? Making the money, and how does that explain what's going on?
Hey listeners, quick break here. We hope that you are enjoying Eco Justice Radio. We air every Friday at 3 p.m. on KPFK Los Angeles. Stay connected to us by subscribing to Eco Justice. Justice.
The Moreno Valley project, the warehouse project, was first the warehouse. The Moreno Valley project, the warehouse project, was first proposed in 2012. A bunch of environmental groups, including the Coalition for Clean Air, represented by Earth Justice, sued to challenge the city's approval for the environmental impact report. Recently, a settlement was reached. What was the argument against the Moreno Valley mega warehouse project, and what are the details of that settlement, if you can share that? And that would be you, Adrian.
Yeah, so we were challenged. Yeah, so we were challenging it, and there were actually 3 lawsuits over the years.
Oh snap! I'm still in the wrong. My bad.
Years, based. Lawsuits over the years, basically claiming that the environmental review, which is something people have to do before they can get approvals for these types of projects, was unlawful. And we won several lawsuits, and by the time we got to the 3rd lawsuit, the developer and his lawyers, we kind of decided, hey, let's start fresh and let's see if we can figure something out. And, after lots of meetings, Dr. Lou sat on many, we were able to get creative and kind of figure out a way that the project could move forward, but we could also seek to address some of the harms that Earth Justice's client Earth Justice that harms that Earth Justice's clients were asserting in the case. And we ended up entering into an agreement. Ended up entering into an agreement, and it's a large agreement that has many facets. I think it's sets a precedent in the freight and logistics industry, not only in Southern California, but nationally, about how do we start thinking about zero emissions? How do we start thinking about community amenities to help alleviate the harms from warehousing, logistics, and neighborhoods? And then also and neighborhoods. And then also it did some stuff on the biological impacts, because that's a piece that often doesn't receive as much focus is this issue of freight sprawl. As we grow out our logistics system, it's going out into agricultural land and other places on the outside of our urban areas, and actually can pose harms to wildlife and impose other impacts. And so, the agreement was up to $47 million, and it will go to fund things like electric trucks, actual electric cars for community members, charging stations, e-bikes, air filtration systems. Air filtration systems and noise mitigation for people who live next to the project. It has some innovative lighting to help protect some of the bird species on the southern end of the project, and just to kind of wide range of things. But it was a very hard fought battle that went over many years. We had to keep time records, and for many years. We had to keep time records, and so we had to keep time records, and so I was looking at my time records for the series of cases, and I spent a lot of time on these cases, and we spent a lot of time in settlement. And to the credit of the developer, Highland Fairview, and his lawyers at Latham and Watkins, we were able to come to, I think, what was a good settlement, and hopefully will be the standard moving forward for these types of developments and addressing the harms.
10 years almost. It's been almost 10 years. Do you both feel that this settlement was a win for the environment? And if so, why would the goods movement give into it? Because usually when we're in the environmental community and we're fighting against the big guys, they push back.
I've never asked Adrian whether he thinks it was a win or not. I'm interested to hear his answer.
Yeah. I mean, it's tough. I mean, you're adding to the system. And so the system is something that's causing harm in the region. I do think it's a win in that it's the first big settlement, I think, that has zero emissions to address trucking, cargo equipment. Also, we got creative in how do you provide benefits to the communities? Everything from e-bikes to electric cars. How can, you need to address the issues on site, but also we need to recognize that these facilities have harms in the communities. And so I think we struck a nice balance of addressing a lot of issues, and we struck communities. And so I think we struck a a nice balance of addressing a lot of issues and setting some precedent. Are there things I would have wanted to be stronger for my clients, including Dr. Lou? Yeah, of course. But that will be the next one.
Yeah, I agree with Adrian's characterization. Absolutely spot on. That's kind of how I look at it too. It's neither an all-out win or an all-out loss. It turned out to be what it was. I do think, first of all, I have to give kudos publicly to Adrian and the work that he did over the 10 years on this project. This is a major project and quite an undertaking, and going up against, the best lawyers that money can buy, time and time again in court, him and his team at Earth Justice, just doing a wonderful job representing Coalition for Clean Air and our co-plaintiffs in this case, and bringing it to a settlement that, we could at least be happy with. And that was pretty remarkable. One of the turning points, though, was when the developer decided to bring in new lawyers, and lawyers who, for once, would sit down and listen to what we were asking for. And that was really different. Really different, and I think showed that, if you're a business, you're trying to do work in the warehouse industry, you don't have to assume that it's impossible to reach agreements with the environmental advocates, the community advocates, and others who are involved in normally opposing what you're proposing to do. Once those
I'll be right back. Be right back. I'm back.
One, two, three, four.
You know, once those attorneys started really listening and really responding substantively in those negotiations, we made progress, fairly quickly. It took a long time, but it was still relative to how little progress, no progress was made over the course of the first 8.5 years or so. We got to settlement in a fairly timely manner after that.
And there's another project that I had mentioned previously, and that's the San Bernardino Airport that's going to be used as a goods movement corridor. That's going to be used as a goods movement corridor in the Moreno Valley. What is the proposed project, Adrian, for the airport, and what are the major corporations, or what is the major corporation that's behind it?
Yeah, so it's actually in San Bernardino at the San Bernardino International Airport, and it was a massive project. It was a massive project to add warehousing at the airport and also expand operations to allow more Amazon cargo to be shipped in and out of San Bernardino. And I think the context for this project is important. We talk about the Los Angeles region having the worst smog in the nation. And if you zero in on that region, the worst smog in the worst region is in San Bernardino. And so it was a project that was going to add thousands upon thousands of pounds of pollution near one of the air monitors that register one of the air monitors that registers near one of the air monitors that registers the highest levels of ozone or smog pollution in the country. And, we had the federal government through the Federal Aviation Administration saying, hey, there's no potential for significant impact. And, we looked at that with our clients and said, that's just absurd. If you don't have an impact when you're adding these massive operations in this air pollution hotspot, then what does have an impact? And so we've been challenging the project. We've been challenging the project. Unfortunately, they were able to build it during the COVID-19 pandemic. So as people were suffering from the pandemic, there was construction and other operations in San Bernardino that's been started. And, we're hopeful that we'll get a favorable ruling from the court. But, one of the big things and a huge, coalition effort out that way to push the airport to do a community benefits agreement. And I think the idea, kind of similar to the World Logistics Center and other kind of projects that's popping up, is this idea of how do we not just give our health and the harms to the industry? How can we do these projects in a way that add more benefit, that add more benefit to the community? And so I'm hopeful that they can compel the airport and Amazon and others to actually, come to the table, develop a community benefits agreement that focuses on zero emissions, focuses on job training, focuses on, helping, on helping to alleviate some of the harms that have really just been hammering the community of San Bernardino for so many years.
Wasn't there a environmental impact statement that was provided by the federal government that said that the government that said that this San Bernardino Airport project for the freight move freight movement was not going to have any significant impacts.
Yeah, and so the environmental impact statement, that's kind of a term of art under law. That's a more rigorous analysis. They didn't even do that more rigorous analysis. They did this more narrow, paltry analysis saying there's no potential for a significant impact. And it was and it was really an absurd argument on their part that we're, challenging court. I mean, hopefully we'll win, but, we're still waiting for the court to decide.
It's from figures that you gave me before, it's 26 planes a day on average. Yeah. So, and planes are a significant source of air quality issues. So how does 26 planes a day with, 0.5 tons of pollutants a day have no environmental impact or human health impact?
Yeah, and that was one of the other things. In addition to the air pollution impacts, we were arguing they overlooked the greenhouse gas and climate pollution impacts. Air freight is a very air freight is a very carbon intensive way to move goods. And, we've seen that companies like Amazon are desiring to do more and more of that. So it was really an example, and back then it was the Trump administration, of the federal government trying to really ignore real and serious consequences of a project. And, I think it was good that my clients, which was Sierra Club, the Center for Community Action and Environmental Justice, and Teamsters Local 1932, and a couple individuals pushed back because we need brave folks who are willing to hire lawyers like myself and go to court to defend their right to breathe.
And Joe, you used to be part of an organization that's supposed to push back and help. You served on the governing board of the South Coast Air Quality Management District, AQMD, from June 2007 to March 2019. What is the purpose of AQMD and the governing board, and what was your role?
Well, that's a big question, but it boils down to South Coast Air Quality Management District, AQMD, being responsible for making sure that you and I have clean air to breathe, and that's kind of what the law boils it down to. The governing board is a 13-member body that is mostly local elected officials, supervisors and city council members and mayors, but 3 statewide appointed officials by the governor, the Senate President Pro Tem, and the Assembly Speaker. I was appointed by Governor Schwarzenegger, reappointed by Governor Brown 2 times, and served for 12 years on that governing board. And state and federal laws, clean air laws say that AQMD has to implement those laws and get to clean air. But it's really important to understand that AQMD has all of this legal responsibility to get to clean air, but it lacks all of the legal authority it needs to make it happen. So the state, the California Air Resources Board, the federal government, EPA, and others, and even international entities like the International Maritime Organization have regulatory responsibilities that must be used in order for us to get to clean air, but AQMD can't force them to do it. So even within its limited authority, AQMD tries to do the best it can, at least it's supposed to try to do the best it can to clean up the air that we breathe.
And there's this regulation for indirect emissions. And can you tell us about how the AQMD moves to regulate those emissions from the distribution of warehouses that's known as indirect source rule, or I guess a better way of saying that is the warehouse rule. What is that rule, and what can AQMD do?
Okay, we're going to get a little policy wonky on you. And I apologize up front that's going to happen. But indirect sources are facilities like ports or warehouses or rail yards that attract other sources of pollution, like ships and locomotives and trucks. And so that's considered an indirect source. They're not necessarily polluting themselves, but the things that they attract are polluting. And so that authority to regulate indirect sources is one of the few areas in which the South Coast AQMD actually has authority to get at mobile sources. And mobile sources are the things that move. And those are things like cars, trains, ships, trucks, planes, and things like that. So South Coast AQMD has limited mobile source authority, has a lot of stationary source authority, and these indirect sources are the thing that the South Coast AQMD has been reluctant to use its authority. It's kind of one of those skeletons in the closet of the regulatory agency, not having exercised its authority, even though it's clear in both federal law and state law that the agency has the authority. So finally, after a lot of fighting, and I've spent 15 years trying to get this regulation adopted, South Coast AQMD, South Coast AQMB, after I had left the governing board, this on May 1st adopted. I think it was May 1st. Is that right, Adrian? I think it was
May 7th.
May 7th. Okay. May 7th adopted the first meaningful indirect source review rule, the warehouse rule, that forces the warehouses to take responsibility for the pollution they create by attracting things like dirty diesel trucks. And so they're given a menu of options of how to reduce the pollution that's caused by their existence, and they have to have to make some tough choices about how they go about doing it. But it was great to finally get South Coast AQMB to fulfill that responsibility and use that authority.
I was actually gonna ask Adrian if you had anything. So I'll do time break real quick. Adrian, did you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the other kind of big victories around this warehouse rule is it's a huge victory. This warehouse rule it's a huge victory for the community. They were the communities who are most harmed from warehouses. Groups that are working on these issues were very persistent, push the agency, build power, convince an agency that's not easy to convince to do hard things like regulate 3,000 warehouses who are all saying, we're going to shut our businesses and leave the region and the sky's going to fall. And I think it was just a huge persistence and determination that the groups that worked on it, like the People's Collective for Environmental Justice and Sierra Club and Center for Community Action, Environmental Justice, Coalition for Clean Air, NRDC, all these groups really kind of did a great job of demanding our regulators do what they're supposed to do, which is regulate and tell polluters to clean up. And I think of any lessons we've learned is we need to do more of that. We need to find any place where our air agencies like the South Coast AQMD or Air Quality Management District, where they have authority, we need to tell them to use that. We need to push other agencies, but a lot of times what you see is kind of regulatory finger pointing. Oh, you need to talk to EPA, you need to talk to Congress, you need to talk to this other agency. And I think what we've got to center them on is that we're going to talk to all those places, but what we need you to do is everything within your authority to solve this air pollution crisis. And I think this is just a great example, and hopefully we'll get more big rules from this agency. And it's nice to have Joe, yelling at the agency, telling them they need to do their job now, which he was had fewer opportunities to do before,
Yeah, I was on the wrong end of a lot of 12-1 votes, I guess.
And they know you, so now you can really wag the finger at them. And one thing, we just have a minute before our break, and I just want to bring it up. It was, one thing I was thinking about when you were talking, Adrian, is that, regulatory finger pointing. And a lot of the times, even with the drought that's happening right now in California, we get the finger pointed at the people. Like, what is, we get the finger pointed at us so many times before it's ever pointed at regulating the businesses that are causing the issue in the first place.
Yeah, I mean, and it's commonly known that this has been a strategy from heavily polluting industries, is to put the debate back on people. And, we need to think about how we can do things better as a society. That's an important discussion. But what we can't do is let it distract us from asking and demanding that Amazon, Walmart, Target, these large corporations clean up their pollution. And I think that's the big problem. And to be candid, I see it. I see it. I see it all the time in the freight industry. There are a lot of lobbying groups that will say, well, if you're asking us to clean up, we'll stop shopping at Walmart or Amazon. It's like, first of all, I don't use those services right now. But even if I did, you can shop at these places and clean up pollution, and we've shown that it's possible. And so I think that's the big rub here. It's not, we understand the economics and the pandemics change things. So it's on people, but more importantly, it's on these companies. We need to figure out a way to make it work.
Thank you. Okay, we'll hit the break. Perfect. Thank you. Okay, well, staff person, right? Who told you this? He come.
Yeah, and I think that's. Yeah.
But it's all her strategy right now, and I thought she was going to be. And then, okay. We're on question 13. So no, we didn't highlight the exact. We hope that you were enjoying Eco Justice Radio and Asia.
Yeah.
Before the break, we were talking about.
I've got a great thing, and I'm going to write it up in a magazine article.
Figure out a way to make it work.
Thank you.
Because this thing combines
Thank you.
a sex urge with a food urge.
Thank you.
Hey, listeners.
You cure both at once. It's called. Oh, you don't? Oh, silly boy.
Thank you.
Hey, listeners, quick break here. We hope that you're enjoying Eco Justice Radio. We air every Friday at 3 p.m. on KPFK Los Angeles. You can stay connected to us by subscribing to Eco Justice Radio on all major podcast apps, and you can also visit our website, ecojusticeradio.org, where you can check out previous shows and guests and get connected with us on social media. Today you are listening to Online Shopping, the Impacts to Air, Land, and Social Justice, with host Jessica Aldridge, myself, and guest Dr. Joe Liu, President and CEO of the Coalition for Clean Air and Commissioner for the California Transportation Commission, and Adrian Martinez, Senior Attorney for Earth Justice.
Before the break.
All right, guys, on that note, I'm going to fucking take a break from this thing because your boy's falling asleep over here. Clearly, you can see this shit is exhausting. Let's see, where can we go? I got too many vibes. We haven't pulled up in the meditation spot in a while. Hey, I'ma take a break. Yes, I'ma take a break. My name is Blake. I'm about to take a break. About to take a motherfucking young break. Chilling with Mr. Pharaoh.